I just don't want to also disclose to the audience, because this is a difficult thing when you're running a debate, that both candidates at the same time were offered an opportunity for advertising, and I think they would readily concede that that was there. And because one of them has the advertising, the other one doesn't mean that, you know, this is not down the middle. I think they both have known that I've discussed the situations with them very thoroughly in terms of the, you know, what's at stake in this election. With that said, is there anybody in the audience that'd like to ask a question, please?
I'm Andrew Buton from DeLand. My question is most particularly for Judge Warren, but if you want to comment also, Mr. Larizza, that would be fine. Based on what you said about the trial rate, I think you mentioned 1.2% or something like that, isn't the reality of that a lot of that is based on the prosecution and the defense will work something out, some sort of agreement, and then the judge will accept that, sign off on that in court? Are you saying that there's something inappropriate about that?
Well, I'm just saying that he's basing his high conviction rate on a percentage of cases. And sure, if you're only going to take the good cases to trial, you should really have more, you should have a percentage rate closer to 100%, because that's what law enforcement has told me, that he'll only take the cases that are really good trial cases on a silver platter. And so if you're only taking the best cases to trial, wouldn't you have a high conviction rate?
Do you have any examples of that? But do you have any examples to show that he's dropped the ball on any of these high-profile cases? For example,
I'm not saying on high-profile cases. Don't
well, no,
misunderstand
but I
what I'm
mean,
trying
there
to
was
say.
there was this implication that he had all these capital cases that didn't result in.
Oh, no. I'm sorry if I implied that. I was just talking about the types of cases in that 10,000.
Right.
I didn't go down the whole
I see.
line. There was,
I
most of them were like property crimes, burglaries, and things like that.
I'm sorry, yes.
Well,
You want to answer the gentleman's question?
I believe this gentleman works at the public defender's office, and he knows the bulk of cases are plea bargain. It's the reality of our system. The judges listen to the attorneys. The attorneys know more about the cases and the facts than the judges do. And the judges rely upon the public defenders, the defense attorneys, and the state attorney's office to work these cases out. Anybody that'll tell you that more than 2% of the cases should go to trial doesn't understand how our system is. And whether we all like it or not, whether you agree with all of them or not, the bottom line is that plea negotiations are how 98 to 99% of the cases that get filed get resolved. That is the reality, and that's not going to change unless you exponentially expand our criminal justice system. Right now we get less than 1% of the state budget for the court system. Less than 1%. The money's not there to expand it.
But you get 1%, but what about the incarceration costs? Those are tremendous.
Certainly are.
And Judge Warren, you're saying that the 1% isn't anything to be bragging about. Could you and your colleagues, and when you're on the bench, handle more than that caseload?
We could. Why is it that we have so many cases, so many weeks of trial weeks, that we don't have trials? There's got to be more cases that should be tried rather than negotiated.
If that's the case, why do you
Why do we what?
have so many cases that keep getting continued?
Well, first off, I'm not convinced that that statement is totally accurate. Now, I do know that we've had instances where there were too many continuances in cases. But think about it. We're talking about over 10,000 felonies plus over 20, 30, even upwards of 40,000 misdemeanors a year that come through the office. And people aren't always ready. If the judge doesn't give a continuance sometimes, it can set that case up for an appeal down the road. And there is a fundamental fairness issue with the defendants, whether we like it or not, whether you agree with it or not. But to make that blanket comment, I mean, we resolved over 140,000 cases over a 2-year period.
Out of how many?
Well, I don't know the exact numbers of cases that we have when you count all the open cases and everything that's coming in.
Well, are you counting cases where it's a felony and maybe 2 misdemeanors, and the 2 misdemeanors get dropped because you're going for the felony, or you drop the felony and take the misdemeanors instead because it's a safer conviction?
We close them out by case numbers. And if there's misdemeanors with a felony in one case number, that's one case. But there could be 3 or 4 or 5 counts in that particular case. Or you have your misdemeanor cases with no felonies, and felonies with no misdemeanors. My point is, we're getting the cases closed out. We're doing the work, but this is not like going in the grocery store and picking stuff off the shelf. There's human lives at stake. There's public safety at stake, and you have to be right. You have to take the time to make the right decisions, and sometimes it takes more time than what we'd all want it to take.
Well, let me ask both of you this, and I'll get back with you now while I have the thought in my head. Phil Havens is here. He's Dustin Havens' his dad. He tried a case of a little girl named Zaniyah Henson, basically baked to death in a daycare van, and they brought criminal charges, but it didn't result in anything. I think that was a clear-cut case. The only black child in the daycare at that age group, and they left her in the van for 4 hours. And the mother comes there at the expectation that her child's taken care of. Would you hold that against the state attorney if that didn't result in a conviction, which was under Mr. Tanner's watch, Judge Warren?
No, I'm not going to take any one case and hold anything against Mr. Larizza or Mr. Tanner personally. I just want people, if the cases are close, I want the folks to have their day in court. This jury appeal thing, this standard of, well, it just doesn't have jury appeal.
What do you mean by that?
That's what I want to know. Does it have to be sexy or something to have jury appeal?
State Attorney Larizza, what is jury appeal? I've heard
Well,
the term.
first of all, I don't know what context she's using it in, but jury appeal typically refers to when you've got a case to present, and it's not, you put a murder case in front of a jury, you put even though it's nasty and ugly, a child sex abuse case in front of a jury, there's a certain, it rivets their attention. Some cases don't grab the jury's attention like something like that. And I think that might be what my opponents refer to.
I think enough of the candidates for judge and state attorney and that know that I've sat in a lot of jury selections, and typically you guys pick the dumbest people you can find that'll win your side. So how does that...
Well, I don't agree with that, Henry.
Well, no, I mean, let's face it. I mean, you have strikes and back strikes.
You try to get fair jurors.
That's not you, that's everybody. I mean, I never covered your court. I'm talking about in the time before that. So how does that weigh into your convictions?
What you mean about jury selection?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you don't think jurors are dumb, O.J. Simpson, Casey Anthony,
Well, I'm
the
sorry.
public confidence,
I'm not going to say jurors are dumb. I've picked a lot of juries. And first of all, they come into that courtroom, most of them a lot of them are scared to death. They've never been in an environment like that. They're ill at ease. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. Plus, excuse my language, some of them are a little pissed off because they have to be there and they'd rather be working or somewhere else. But they're good people. And when you get them on that jury, they appreciate the experience. And I believe in the jury system. I believe in the people and the citizens of this circuit. And I've found people that have differing points of views, and some people don't care to philosophize.
Well, I'm just asking because the term of jury appeal, or whatever the term was, what about that, Judge Warren? What about the issue of picking the right jury and what impact that could have on the result?
I've tried a lot of cases.
Right.
As a lawyer and as a judge, I've sat with many jury cases. And I found even the he said, she said cases, because I was in domestic violence court, we were in specialized court for 8 years. And in those kind of cases, the victim, the spouse or the girlfriend would not want to testify. So the cases that were taken to trial, they weren't a waste of time for the jury. They were glad that they were there. They had an input, and I think we should try more of these cases to get the message out that the courts, the state attorney, is not going to take this lightly. It's important to the community to know that they can come and have their cases heard. Rape victims need to know that they can come and get help from the system, all because they're going to use a defense of, well, it was consensual sex. Well, that's not gonna hold water. If the victim is ready to go to court and she's prepared to go forward, we're gonna go forward.
So-
We're not gonna talk people out of these kind of cases.
Okay, let me understand something. So we went from jury sex appeal to rape victims. Are you not prosecuting, are you not holding a standard for women accused of, raped?
We absolutely are vigorously.
Is that the implication, Judge Warren?
Well, from what some of the rape cases, I was on the Rape Crisis Board years ago, and I stay in contact with SART nurses, and they feel, and victim advocates have been let go from the state attorney's office. I want to bring those victim advocates back. I want the Rape Crisis Center to be more involved with our cases, and I want to make a much stronger prosecution of these kinds of cases, because they're, as far as I'm concerned, they're not being handled properly.
Henry, we've got a sex crimes unit on the east side of Volusia County. We prosecuted, it's been a year or so back, we've prosecuted a law enforcement officer. We got a guilty conviction of sexual battery. The judge reduced it down to battery, and we were so incensed, we appealed it. And we got the 5th
Are you talking
DCA
about
to send it.
Is that the beach one?
I forget specifically what law enforcement agency, but my point is, we appealed it, got the 5th DCA to reverse, bring it back, and that gentleman was sentenced to what he deserved. These sex cases are very complex, and what I heard my opponent say was, well, they don't always want to testify, but by God, we're going to go to court. Sometimes the victims, they don't want to go into that courtroom and testify, and they're begging, can we do something? I don't want to get in there. They got to go in the courtroom with the person who has sexually assaulted them, and they got to speak to a group of people that they've never met before. There's a lot of complicated issues in trying sexual batteries, child sex abuse cases, all of those things that can't be summarized and tied up in a little bow for everybody here tonight. We got to take our time, and we have a sex unit that their whole focus is to work those cases, make the right decisions, intaking them, making sure we can prove them, and prosecute them. I'm proud of what they've done. We vigorously prosecute those cases.